Welcome to Prime Suspects for your weekly insider's look behind the counter of Prime Sports. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis. Today's topics: the football weekend that was, the story making the rounds on gambling Twitter around a regulated operator's suspicious treatment of a specific customer, the aftermath of Tyson Paul, and the legacy of legendary lawyer Ted Olson. Guys, kicking this off, as always, with the latest from Inside Prime Sports. Adam, at this rate, I'm feeling like we can just pre-record the show's intro up to this point and simply start recordings with you basking in the glow of yet another 2-0 showing on your Saturday Twitter live stream with Scott, aka Vegas Horse Pools. Tell us about the latest triumphs on this magical run that you're on.
Well, again, it showed in the results. Ohio pregame was the best Ohio pregame result that we've had with our anti-Ohio stand in those two games. You know, the live was a little bit rough, but yeah, pregame this week was really good across the board, but in particular Ohio, which again, if you're watching Saturday night, you're getting all the heaters coming in there. The live, again, Ohio, we've got one player that bets a lot of favorites that when they're shortening up and then they just go on to win the game. We really need some sort of big swings late in the game to even that up for us. And across the board, actually, Ohio was good in a lot of sports. So apart from the live football, Ohio kind of turned around the last few weeks, and, you know, we're just going to keep punching through.
And with Ohio turning around in the last few weeks, is that correlated with any sort of inverse type of turnaround in New Jersey, as we had seen previously?
No, in New Jersey, again, pregame was good. The live, we lost a little bit, not necessarily on football. You know, we did a mail out last week and had sort of a record day of first deposits. It's just getting the players in. We've always said it. We need more players. We need more liquidity. We have a couple of players that just are running hot as well. And, you know, it's just keep getting punched in the nose, moving forward. Hopefully the results will fall. This is a long game.
Yeah, and if players want perhaps a fair shot that they're not getting in certain markets, maybe they'll be champing at the bit for a shot at a Prime Sports account as you guys enter more jurisdictions. I'll use that as a jumping off point as we shift gears from the gridiron to the virtual battleground that is gambling Twitter. Our water cooler segment this week, per a post by Nat Buckhalter, also known as Plus EV Analytics, a licensed Ontario, Canada operator, Titan Play, didn't like a customer's action, so they basically doubled the vig on his account. As Captain Jack Andrews noted, dealing different lines based on a player's skill isn't a new trick, but it's reprehensible in a regulated market. Open-ended question to you guys, starting with Joe to bring you into the fold here. What do you make of this situation?
So from a legal aspect, it's actually permitted for operators to charge different prices. You don't have to sell the same bet to every player at the same price. So from a legal regulatory perspective, Titan Bet, whomever they are, they've got plenty of cover for this. Also, when you think about it, theoretically, it's like, okay, well, you know, if you are going to offer liquidity to people or offer betting to people who are really good at it, how do you do it in a way where like they, you know, the operator doesn't feel like they're duty bound to just sit there and get punched in the face? Having said all of that, I don't think that this is obviously a workable solution really in any way for the marketplace. I mean, Titan Bet knew what they were doing. If the player was sharp enough that he was winning consistently to make him threatening, then they also know that he's sharp enough to recognize a shitty price when he sees it, and there's no way he's going to push the button there. So they get the desired effect while, I don't know what, keeping their hands clean with regulators and saying like, we didn't limit him and we didn't shut him down or anything like that. We just, you know, we changed the price on him because that's what we have to do. Is I can see what they're doing. You know, so again, this is part and parcel of what is the solution in the regulated marketplace for operators to, you know, they have to take wagers from these people who have been forced to basically play in unregulated marketplaces. These people are trying to find their way into the regulated marketplace, and they are just being blocked by the government's agents in all of this, which are the licensed sports players. This is not sustainable. The market is operating suboptimally. There's a ton of liquidity out there that has no protections of any sort, whether it's integrity monitoring, consumer protection, etc. But right now, it just idea after idea that the operators seem to be coming up with just they're all falling flat. And I hope you don't see broad adoption of something stupid like this that Titan Bet tried to do.
And Adam, if more books share your ethos that more liquidity can be a net positive, we may not see too broad of adoption as far as this goes. You just said in the first segment, once again, a recurring theme on this show, looking to get more liquidity as a book. It strikes me that the approach Titan Play took here might be geared toward the opposite type of outcome.
Yeah, this is a new one for me. I've seen, when I was in the unregulated business 20 years ago, they'd hang 7.5 for the squares and 7 for the pros or a general number, and they try and bleed out a little bit. But yeah, this is new where they've just added VIG to it for a specific player. I mean, the VIG on NBA was pretty wide as it was. I think it was 26 cents and they'd raised it up to over 50 cents. It's just insane where the industry's at, but that's what the regulated market is. That's what the regulated players are doing. Ultimately, all these sports books, if they want to be called that, are casino shops and looking just to get the casino play and market that. And they're adding the sports on just for a bit of a flavor where you can switch back and forth. But yeah, this is a new one and it's pretty ugly. But as Joe said, there's nothing against the rules or regulations or laws or anything for this. This is just the state of the game. And it kind of, is again, another positive notion for us. If we just keep staying the course, if we keep being true to what we are, keep putting up numbers, keep taking bets, take punches in the nose, roll with it, then there's a spot for us. And ultimately, that's kind of the goal of what we're doing here is building out a niche of players that are just tired of getting screwed and just want a place where they can bet, get paid, and move on.
Well, from the state of the game in the province of Ontario to the state of Texas, our look-ahead segment this week. For those of us who navigated the myriad buffering, audio, and video issues, there was a boxing match to watch last Friday night between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. Adam, no technical difficulties on your end as you were in attendance in Dallas. How was your experience and how was the result for the book?
So, result for the book, and I held this from our first segment, was phenomenal. It was clearly the best result of the weekend. The flow of the odds, as I said, we'd laid as low as minus 375. It went all the way back down where it got to a point where it was just take Tyson money at plus 185, 190, 195, anything under 200. It was just lay Tyson. And sort of as it got close to the fight again, the money headed back in the other direction. Everything about this just screamed McGregor Mayweather with the way that flowed back then that, the recreational players, there was people involved in this. And I've had a few conversations that have never bet boxing in their life, but was betting on this fight. And then it just come in where the pros and the ones that could lay, a 220, a 230 would just come in and we're just thinking it was, free money on the other side. And again, depending on what generation you sort of spoke to or the conspiracy theorists, that's kind of where the side stood. If you spoke to someone, younger, they were saying, well, Paul's never going to lose this. He's the one paying Tyson $20 million. Like, it's a set-up spectacle. But I think the big changing moment was in that first round when Tyson popped Paul pretty good and Paul realized that, hey, I better back off and become a boxer. And that's what sort of ended up showing for sort of the next 7 rounds was you get hit in the nose once by Tyson and you're like, no, this isn't fun anymore. So I'm just going to do what I'm meant to do. And it kind of led into what was expected, coming up, Paul by decision. It was up around 3-1 multiple times before the weekend. That's sort of what I was looking at positioning our spot for. But, being on site, it was 100% pro Tyson. Every time Tyson was on the screen, there was cheers. Every time Paul was up, there was boos. Unfortunately, during the fight, as it went on, people started to boo and whatnot. It was what was expected for me. I mean, we got 2 cracking fights on the undercard. Whatever you paid for your ticket, you got that in spades from the earlier fights. And the main event was what the main event kind of was expected to be. Really good first round where they were throwing. Again, I think that one shot from Tyson to Paul sort of put them both in a spot where Tyson was just looking for that one swing and Paul turned into a boxer. We saw a bit of heavier action in the 5th and 6th round, which you could see Tyson was wearing thin, and I thought there was a chance he wouldn't make it to the end. But, with those 14-ounce gloves, it was hard to get a knockout either of them. So, for me, I'd do it again if I knew that was the outcome of the show collectively. Again, the undercard fights were, there was 2 crackers and a third one that was pretty decent. So, that's how it goes.
And Joe, to quote your Twitter post in the aftermath of the fight, I started with boxing when I was 6 years old and grew up in the golden age of heavyweights. In the 50 years since, I have never seen anything as sad and cynical as that fight. In the spirit of this being our look ahead segment, coming out of that fight, what do you foresee for the future of boxing, perhaps featuring a heavy dose of influencers like Paul?
Well, I think you're probably going to see a forking of boxing. There'll be boxing, and then there'll be boxing, right? Guys like Bud Crawford are doing. And then there's going to be like what Jake Paul is doing. Jake Paul, you know what? God bless the kid, since, half of our business is in Ohio. I don't want to say anything to offend the son of Ohio here. But God bless him that he's found this niche where he makes a ton of money, notoriety. Seems like he can roll with it being the heel, people booing him and everything like that. But he's essentially the equivalent of a social media clown. And it amazes me that he continues to get traction with this like fight, what retiree is he going to fight this time? And every retiree that he goes to, Adam pointed out, like, Paul's company they're producing this. So Mike Tyson is being paid by Jake Paul. He had an incentive written into his contract that if he went past 5 rounds, he got an extra $10 million. So he was going to hold, even if he did almost kill Paul in the first, with just one punch in the first round, seems like he figured out real quick, like, whoa, was it just Jake Paul stood back and did a cosplay as a boxer rather than a brawler, but Tyson also realized, like, Jesus, that I almost cost myself $10 million, right? I think you're going to see more of this kind of like really sports as entertainment, similar to how pro wrestling is entertainment. And then what you see with the Bivals and the Crawfords and so forth. And, that's going to be a different branch. What is more lucrative? I don't know. I think when you look at the production, being somebody who was sitting at home, I don't even want to know what Adam paid for those seats, because when we put up the first picture, I was sitting ringside. I was like, at a regular championship fight, that'd be like $10,000 worth of seats. Okay. But, what is it, like my $20 a month for Netflix? That was a horrible experience. Absolutely horrible experience. That's all 30 seconds. The screen froze. And then I don't think I saw live 3 seconds in a row of the rest of that fight. As betting entertainment, I wonder if this is also going to be kind of like in the category of, the match that you had between Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, some of these, how much competition is going to be built really as kind of, not only sports entertainment, but betting, is particularly just to be betting opportunities. That's all. I just coming out of that, I tried to kind of maintain that perspective on it. But as somebody who's has loved boxing, it was the first sport I ever did as a kid. And as I said in my tweet, just looking at it, it was such a sad boxing affair. And then the 2 prior fights that Adam mentioned, it was like watching, Rock'em Sock'em Robots in the title fight or in the top of the card. And then watching like Tom Hearns and Marvin Hagler first round in those other 2 fights. They were just warriors going at each other, particularly the women. I was really impressed with that fight. But then both of those fights were affected by what I would call squirrely judging. All in all, I don't think that Nikisa Badarian's company distinguished themselves with that production. I don't think that Netflix should be in the live sports business or boxing business until they get shit figured out. But I'm happy that we had a great day. I guess in the end, that's what's the most important.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it was when Paul was coming out of the tunnel or whatnot, you had to, again, neither fans of him here or there didn't know him in their Disney shows or any of that stuff. But that's one hell of a way to, come out and put this whole thing together. Whoever they are as brothers, whoever they are as performers, anything like that, to be in that stadium, and that's what they've created. It was quite phenomenal, sort of being in there, seeing it, and sort of taking a step back from the judgment aspect of what it was and what we were there to see. But it was very, very impressive from that front. On the Netflix side, they have some games to be showing Christmas Day. So this was meant to be their warm-up, and they seem like they failed horribly. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here and what changes are made on that front.
Yeah, just a shout out to Floyd Mayweather Jr. because he is the first fighter who really pioneered that, like, well, look, I'm the draw. I'm going to put this thing on. And then the promoters, they get promoted after I get I pay for the venue. I pay for the closed circuit stadium for satellite broadcast. It shows you how far back I go, closed circuit. I pay for the broadcast rights. I do that. I'll pay the opponent, but I keep the residuals on it. And that's why Floyd Mayweather, for so many years, towards the end of his career, was like the number one paid athlete in the world, always sitting atop that Forbes ranking. He was, I mean, not only was he probably one of the top 3 fighters of all time, when it came to the way he did business, he's probably number one.
Well, it's great to hear, Adam, that it was a phenomenal experience in person. And as you both touched on the streaming side, a lot for Netflix to figure out between now and Christmas. We'll see how they can piece things together. And in the meantime, we do have one more segment this week. It's going to be on a more somber note, but one that's worth acknowledging. Legendary lawyer Ted Olson passed away on November 13th. Olson successfully argued in front of the Supreme Court for the repeal of PASPA, and more broadly was known as a true titan in the industry. Joe, you knew Ted personally and worked with him to get PASPA overturned. How would you describe what his legacy and the relationship you developed with him mean to you?
Well, I mean, my relationship is we started this thing, and in the end, we needed to hand it off to somebody who could win. And that was Ted Olson. He was really the only guy. To this day, I remember when I got the call from Dale Florio and Bill Pascrell, our lobbyists in New Jersey, and they said, Governor Christie just hired Ted Olson. I knew who Ted Olson was because of, like Bush v. Gore, and then gay marriage, constitutional challenge. And I mean, the guy was just a once in a generation, if not more, mind when it came to these things. And the fact that you got a guy who's done all these consequential, for the history books, constitutional arguments in the Supreme Court, and now he's with us arguing our side. I'll tell you, I was convinced we were right from the get-go, starting all the way back in November of 2008. The day that Christie announced that they had hired him, I was like, we're going to win. We're going to win. And there's very few people I've met in life or know of in life who were irreplaceable in their role. We're all replaceable. It's like the graveyards are full with irreplaceable men, as the saying goes. Ted Olson couldn't have been replaced. There was nobody who could have made this case the way he did. I highly recommend, if you get a chance, to listen to Michael Lewis's new podcast, Against the Rules, in particular the episode, Welcome to the Garden State, Baby, which, in addition to me, Governor Christie and Senator Ray Lesniak, features at the very end Ted Olson talking about that suit. And he's a remarkable guy. And for a guy who, when you'd see him, you'd see grown men and women, amazingly accomplished professional lawyers. And they would go and they'd approach him like he was Babe Ruth, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan. I mean, like it was amazing. And I never once saw the guy act as anything other than like a down-to-earth, 100% polite and genial guy. So one of the few people who in person measured up to the legend.
I feel like it's safe to say we wouldn't be here today having this conversation without Ted Olson and his contributions to the industry. So to the audience, I hope you'll join us in wrapping up by appreciating all he brought to the sports betting space we all love. Want to thank you, the audience, as always, for making us a part of your week, and we'll catch you next week right back here on Prime Suspects. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.